What is up, harvesters? Welcome back to the returning viewers, and if you're brand new here, welcome to Hobby Harvest. My name is Ken. So today I want to talk to you guys about how to create poor man deer funnels. Now, we're going to talk about what these actually are, where you should be placing them on your property, how to place them on your property, and then how to hunt them. So let's get into it. So the first thing we need to cover is what exactly a poor man deer funnel is. Well, a poor man deer funnel is just any funnel that creates a pinch point in your woods to make deer movement more predictable in your area. Now, these are not going to be an attraction that the deer are going to come to. We simply want to place these between existing attractions. So if you have figured out the general deer movement in your area, you know which food source they're relating to and the general area of where their bedding area is, we want to put these somewhere between those two places, and we're going to really funnel them down and pinch them into a specific area so it makes it easier to hunt them. Now, if you don't know where the food is, you don't know where the bedding is, at least get out in the woods and look for where the existing deer trails are. Generally, if you follow them in any given direction long enough, you will be able to get an overall general direction of movement from a general area over there to a general area over there. And this may be in a case where, say, 5 trails move this way and maybe 1 or 2 go this way, so they might actually be going in every direction, but just figure out where the majority of them are headed, and that is the line of movement you're going to want to focus on here. So what we're going to do here in order to create these is we're simply just making a man-made deer trail in the woods. So if you guys have tried to follow down a deer trail that's just naturally occurring before, you're usually having to push sticks out of the way. They're pretty thick. Some places the deer are having to like squeeze through them. I'm amazed that those bucks with their big racks can even get through some of those trails at some time. And maybe they can't. Maybe they avoid those trails altogether because they're just too thick and they can't fit through them when their antlers are fully grown. We do know that when the bucks are in velvet, they won't go down those trails. So bucks are always different areas in the summertime simply because they can't go into those thick areas, but they love those thick areas in the fall. So what we want to do is kind of open up a trail a little bit. Now this can be an existing deer trail that you just want to focus on, and you simply just open up this existing deer trail a little bit. Now, what you're doing here is essentially creating the interstate system. So in the United States, we have the interstate system. It gets you from point A to point B faster than taking the surface streets. So what we're doing here is just making one of these trails or creating a brand new one. You can do that too. They will use it. Is to create a deer trail that is the most open. It's got the biggest turn lanes. It's got the biggest straight area that you can go straight and go fast. Now, when we're making these, we don't actually want straightaways for too long. We want to make these bend and weave, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But we do want to make the area that the deer can move through the woods from point A to point B without having to brush through a bunch of thick cover, without having to expend those calories that they work so hard on gaining by pushing through thick cover and ducking under sticks and jumping over logs and all of that kind of stuff. So what we want to do here is once we've established this line of movement is pick which trail we want to do this on or area that we want to create a new one on. Now, if you are creating in a new area, ideally you don't want this going up like really steep topography. You want this to kind of follow the terrain itself, or at least if it is going to go up through some terrain or through some topography, make sure it goes through like the saddle of a hill and you're not just climbing to the top of a peak of a hill for no reason, because that's where the deer will naturally move. But as we do this, just get out there. You can do this very cheaply. This is why this is a poor man deer funnel. You can get out there and do what I've been doing since I was a little kid with my dad and grandpa out there and just snap sticks and branches off to open the trail up a little bit. Those will eventually dry out and just fall off on their own. But what you're doing is just basically opening up this thicker area of the woods. And this is going to work best if you do this in a thicker area of the woods to open up that thick area, make it easier for them to get through there. They will most definitely follow that. That's what's going to create this pinch point in this funnel. Now, if you are in more of an open, big hardwoods, you can still do this, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So if you are in a thick area, even if it's just thick marsh, thick grass, get in there with a weed whacker or a lawnmower and just mow a path, and that will be where the deer decide to move on. They don't want to push against all of that natural vegetation out there in order to get from point A to point B. Now, what we do when we do this, just make sure these bend and weave through the woods. You don't want to be able to see down the trail too far in any direction. The deer do not like to see in straight lines like that down a trail through the woods. If they feel they're in a thick area of the woods, they still want to feel like they're in a thick area of the woods, even if the specific trail they're standing on is wide open for them to walk on. And so just a tip of like how open these should be. You don't necessarily need to make them so big that you could drive something like a four-wheeler down them. You want them to be essentially like a hiking trail that if two people were going to meet, they would kind of have to step off the side of the trail, but that if a single person's walking down the trail, they're not brushing up against anything while they walk down the trail. So as tall as you are to as wide as you are, that you can walk down the trail and not brush up against anything. Just create these through the woods, from that bedding area to that food source, or just along that line of movement that you've discovered in the woods. Now, what you want to do with all of the debris that you're maybe snapping off with your bare hands, or you can take a loppers out there or whatever else you can use, whatever other tools you want to use to remove branches. If you have a chainsaw and you want to use that, you can do that too, but just snapping branches off with your bare hands works perfectly fine. Take some of that debris and put it where you don't want the deer to go. So we don't want to like create a cattle chute where you take all this debris and set it right on the sides of the trail. We do not want that. But if you make a trail for say 10 yards and you now have a significant amount of debris built up, and there's maybe an offshoot trail that goes the other way that you don't want the deer to go down, pile up that debris perpendicular to the trail. So if the trail's going down this way, pile it up this way to create like a barricade that keeps them on your main trail. They will stay on it. Now, if for whatever reason they want to follow that trail because it goes somewhere that yours does not, they'll just pick it up further on down your trail. But it at least keeps you pinching them into the specific spot that you want them. So this is a great way to get a trail cam out there, see what deer are on your property, and then it's also a great way to hunt. Now, when you hunt this, you need to be very careful about your hunter ingress and egress, because this is a travel corridor that you're creating through this thick part of the woods. You want to make sure that you can get in and out of it without spooking deer that are in that area. So if your trail is going this way for the deer, you want to be able to access on either side of it and then away from the trail. You don't want to walk down this trail right to your stand location, leaving all of your scent right where those deer are going to eventually walk. So make sure you keep that in mind, that you have a way in and out from the sides of this area and you don't actually go into that area itself. Now, if you are in the big woods, this can come with a little bit more work, because what you're going to want to do here is build up those debris piles that are perpendicular to your trail, and that may consist of having to cut down some bigger trees. I would cut down your subordinate trees that you don't want growing in your forest anyway, or just big trees that aren't very good habitat trees that you're just trying to get out of your canopy to get more sunlight down to your forest floor. Because when you are in a big mature woods, that's not very attractive to a deer herd, because they need all the stuff that grows down at the ground, not all the big high canopy. So if you do want to get in there and drop some of those high canopy trees, great. This does get into a lot more work, a lot more chainsaw time, and a little bit away from the nature of the poor man deer funnel. But what you can do is drop those big trees, create those big debris piles, again, that go perpendicular away from your trail, that kind of act like wing dams. For any of you guys that have fished the Mississippi, there's wing dams under the water that guide the current of the water down the middle of the river so the big barges don't get stuck and they have a channel to continually travel in. You want to do that with these debris piles. It's just every so often redirect the deer herd back down your main trail. Now, if you're in a field, I already said you can just remove the grass with a weed whacker, with a lawnmower, whatever. Even just walking through an area enough times to trample the grass down will work as well. Whatever that easiest line of movement through that big, tall, thick grass is going to be very advantageous to you to getting those deer to move exactly where you want them to move. Now, when we do hunt these, I like to have a stand location on either side of them. So if your trail goes here, I like to have a stand here and here so that you can hunt your wind. Now, I said before, don't walk on your trail. You can cross it. If you come in this way, you need to cross it for a second just to get to the stand on the other side. But ideally, you could have two hunter ingress and egress to get in and out of either side of this, depending on how your property's set up and where you're putting this on it. But you do want to hunt the wind here. You don't want these deer to be just getting blasted with your scent as soon as they're coming into range, especially if we're talking about like bow season where they're going to have to get pretty close to you. Really make sure you have options to hunt the wind here. Don't hunt it at all, because if you're busting them out of this area, they'll tend to avoid it, and then you just put in all this work for nothing anyway. Now, the other thing you want to do in these pinch points, right where your stand locations are, is give the deer something else to focus on other than you up in the tree. So these are a great place to put in a mock scrape. You can just hang a mock scrape right there, right in the middle. If you want to throw a watering hole in, you can do that too. That'll definitely make this a cruising corridor or a cruising pinch point for those rutting bucks. They'll want to hit up water. They'll want to hit up where there's known deer activity. And if they know that this funnel is here, that all of the deer come through this area, they're definitely going to cruise through there to sniff it out and see if there's a hot doe that's been through there in a while, and then also hit up that water hole so they can get a drink and continue on their way. Now guys, I was happy to share this with you. These are my stand locations that I see the most success at. I put in food plots, I work on bedding areas, and those are all great attractions, but these pinch points between those attractions are where I've seen the most personal success in my hunts. Now, make sure you guys get your cameras out there too so you see what's coming through. You get a chance to try to scout your deer herd, see what time of day they're coming through. Also then, if you do know where those food sources are and they maybe weren't getting to those food sources till after dark, and now you kind of put this highway in there for them that gets them there a little sooner because they don't have so much brush to beat through to get there. If you get those cams out, you can see that this is actually working for you and that these deer are actually getting to your food sources sooner. Now, if you want to see which cameras I use, I will leave them linked down in the description. You can go check those out. I wish you guys luck with these habitat improvements and on your upcoming hunt this fall. And if you really enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this one. Otherwise, go check out that one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.